Hello everybody and welcome back. Today is a super exciting video because I'm going to be reading my most watched Booktubers favorite books. I watch a lot of Booktube. I'm subscribed to a lot of people, so unfortunately not everyone is on this list. There were a few people that I didn't see their favorites of the year in time, or their favorites of the year were all full of books I had already read. So there are a few people that I just started watching, but I'm absolutely loving their channel. There are some old favorites and I am so very excited to get started with this video. So let's go through who I am going to be reading and what I'm going to be reading from them. First up, we have Kayla from Books and Lala. Kayla is one of the first booktubers that I found that I started watching long before I started my channel. She's just got such a way with talking about books and making sure that people understand why, if she didn't like a book, they might like it as well. She's very eloquent and I love her vlogging style. And so I knew that she had to be on this list. So I went through her favorites of the year and I think the one that I'm going to choose is Confessions. This is a thriller, slightly horror about a woman that is teaching a class, and I think that the young students may have killed her daughter. It is a translated work, which I'm really excited about. This was, I think, her number 5 pick. It was also on Gavin's best of the year, so we're just going to be kind of hitting two birds with one stone, and I'm super excited to get to this one. Okay, so next we have Chandler from Chandler Ainsley. Chandler reads a decent amount of romance, but she also mixes in some other genres, the occasional fantasy, the occasional thriller, and I've just been loving her channel. She's got lots of cats. I love looking at the cats, and she's just got a very calm, soothing aesthetic that I really enjoy. And I was kind of struggling through her list because I didn't really want to read a romance, no lie. I was hoping that I could find something that was not a romance, and I stumbled upon Killers of a Certain Age by, is it Deanna Raybourn? I did not think that this was really going to be the book for me, but I wanted to give it a try because I have got her A Curious Beginning series, and I've got the first 2 and I've heard great things about them and I want to read them. So I figured, why not read the standalone? And she said that this one was something that she wanted to kind of lean away from those like super graphic thrillers and just read something that was a little bit more light, and I definitely think that this is going to be a little bit more light. It sounds really interesting. It's 60-year-old women assassins group. It sounds really cool. So I just wanted to give this one a try. Then we have Gabby from Gabby Reads, and again, Gabby's was a little harder than I expected. She reads a lot of thriller, and so I didn't think it would be hard at all for me to find a book on her list, but she enjoyed a lot of romance this year. So finally ended up finding The Shuddering, and The Shuddering is a cold, isolated setting with monsters, and it sounded really good. She said that it read a lot like a horror movie would watch, and so I'm very interested to see what exactly that means and read that one. Next we have Cassidy from Covers with Cassidy, of course. This one was hard because I've read everything on her favorites of the year except for one. And you guys remember me talking about 2023 being the year that I read and finish off more series. Well, the only one that I had not read was Fires of Vengeance by Evan Winter. And I read Rage of Dragons like 2.5 years ago, and no lie, I'm a little bit concerned about continuing because I don't remember any of it. But there's a summary on Reddit. We're gonna do it. We're gonna give it a try. I'm excited because I really enjoyed Rage of Dragons. It is a revenge story. It's got underworld magic and dragons, and the women are the ones that are able to kind of empower the men. Really loved it. Excited for the sequel. Next up we have Riley from Riley Marie, and Riley had a list separate for romance than she did for her other favorites of the year, but I just went with the general favorites of the year list and found Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. T. Kingfisher is an author that is a little bit hit or miss for me. Some of her books I really love, and others have not really been my thing. Hers that lean way into the horror and the weird are the ones that I enjoy. The ones that are a little bit lighter and fluffier, not often the ones that I love. Sword Heart is one of the fluffier ones, so we're gonna see how this works. It is a cozy fantasy about a woman that her husband has died and left, or no, her uncle has died and left her his inheritance, and her family is kind of squabbling over it. One day she decides that she's just going to kill herself on the sword, but when she pulls the sword from the sheath, a man appears. It sounds cute. It sounds fun. I'm interested in it. I'm a little scared of it, but fingers crossed that it turns out to be a win. Next up we have Kaylee from Kaylee's Books, who is one that I have just started watching in the last year and really love Kaylee's channel. She reads a little bit of everything, kind of like I do, and she loves a lot of books and is so exuberant about talking about them, and I absolutely love that about her. I picked off of her list Sea of Ruin by Pam Godwin. There was a bunch that I could choose off of this list, but it's actually our indie archive pick for January, so it worked out perfectly. Also, I think Riley Marie may have had it on her favorites list last year, so it works out great. This is a historical pirate romance, and it's supposed to be more of like a dark romance, which is usually my thing, so we're gonna see how that one goes. Then we have Lexi from Books with Lexi. Lexi, another one that I started watching more toward the end of the year last year, and I love Lexi. She is so incredibly creative, and she reads a lot of horror and thriller. Not a huge fantasy fan, but she also reads a lot of sci-fi too, and I have been adoring Lexi's channel. Lexi reads a lot of books and had a lot of books on her favorites of the year, but finally narrowed it down to Sundial by Catriona Ward. I can't get the book out, it's stuck. Catriona Ward wrote The Last House on Needless Street, which I loved. Excuse you, Ollie. They're making a lot of racket in here, I'm sorry guys. I loved Last House on Needless Street last year and really been wanting to dive into more Catriona Ward and to her backlist. Sundial is the more recent release of hers, and it's following a mother who's concerned about her daughter because she's into some really weird and disturbing things. I'm curious. I've heard it's very strange. It's very psychological, and I'm hoping I love it just like I did Last House on Needless Street. Okay, we're coming down to the end, guys. Bear with me. We've got 3 more picks. Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction is next on the list. Ashley's channel is just so soothing and just such a cozy cottagecore place to be. I love her channel. She reads a lot of like dark academia and high epic fantasy and cozy fantasy. And on her list, there were a couple that I could have picked. 2 of them were sequels, and I ended up going with one of the sequels, and that's Atlas Paradox by Olivia Blake. This is the sequel, obviously, to Atlas 6, which is a fantasy, dark academia kind of. That was a self-published book picked up by Tor because of all of the love that it got last year. I really enjoyed Atlas 6. It was not an all-time favorite, but I definitely appreciated it and absolutely want to continue in the series, and this is going to give me that kick in the pants to do so. Then we have a channel that I just started again watching more recently, but I'm really loving her vibes, and that is Nikita. And Nikita has just such a uplifting spirit to her videos. You can tell that she has so much fun at talking about books. And from what I can tell after watching her channel for the last few months, is she reads some sci-fi and she also reads horrors and thrillers. She, I believe, has been on Kayla's channel maybe before for the Literally Dead Book Club. I think that's where I found her channel. And I think I'm gonna pick Mickey 7 off of her list. It was tough between this one and Helldivers. Both of them sounded really good, but she said that Mickey 7 reminded her a lot of Project Hail Mary, and so I was sold. I wanted to know more about this book that reminded her of Andy Weir. So I'll be reading Mickey 7 for Nikita. And then for Dom is one that is known for the indie fantasy. He reads so much indie fantasy. He is my go-to for that. I've really gotten to know Dom a lot better over the last few months, and I love watching his channel and finding books that I would have never otherwise heard of. And he's gonna give me the push to finally read Along the Razor's Edge by Rob J. Hayes. I did not love Never Die, but I did like Titan Hopper. So I think that Rob J. Hayes has a very different writing style depending on which series of his that you choose, and that is such a cool skill to have, honestly. This one is a indie fantasy, a darker indie fantasy with a character, I believe, that is now a prisoner of war, and she is a sorceress and trying to get out of this prison. It's a 5-book series. I imagine the scope will get much heftier than that, but I'm excited. Okay guys, so I have literally been talking for 10 minutes about just the 10 books that I want to read for this video. I hope you guys are excited. Buckle up, because let's jump into the first read. Okay, so it is time to officially start reading for this vlog, and I think I am going to start with the one that is on 2 of my favorite booktubers list, Gavin and Kayla from Books and Lala. They both loved Confessions, and Confessions is a horror thriller that has been translated. I think they both read it for one of the Literally Dead book club picks. And just the quick tagline says, her pupils murdered her daughter. Now she'll have revenge. That seems pretty basic, but I think both of them were like, oh shit. It says it probes the limits of punishment, despair, and tragic love. I'm curious. I'm excited and hopeful, and let's see how it goes. Okay guys, so we're gonna pull Books and Lala's alive. We're gonna chat while I'm cooking dinner. I've decided to do steak tonight. I got an air fryer for Christmas, one of those, well, you can see it right there, that looks like an oven, but it's an air fryer, but it actually is also an oven. You guys, this thing is a total game changer. I don't know if you knew. I never used to cook, like ever. You can do basically anything on this thing. It takes like a fraction of the time. I am absolutely loving it. But anyway, what you guys came here to talk about is confessions. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I think I'm about 30 or 40% in. It's not a very long book. It's only like 210 pages, and it's following a woman whose daughter was murdered, and she is kind of telling this story about what happened and how she handled things. It is very stream of consciousness. Like, it's just exactly what she would be saying or thinking. There's no real like pauses or break in structure, no descriptions, nothing like that. It's extremely stream of conscious writing style. There's also no chapters, and there's no dialogue. I'm struggling a little bit because I need dialogue, I need descriptions, I don't know, but the stream of conscious writing style, I'm just not sure is gonna do it for me personally. It reads pretty quickly, although I feel like it's taking me forever to get through. I don't know, we'll see. The shocking twist at the end of chapter 1 that I had heard about was not overly shocking to me. I kind of saw that, or at least something similar to that coming. It was pretty cutthroat and pretty brutal, but not overly shocking. So I'm curious, I'm interested to see where it's going, definitely not giving up on it, and I'm hopeful because 2 people that love watching their channel have given it 5 stars, so hopefully it's gonna turn out to be at least a 4-star for me too. We'll see. So I'll keep you guys updated. Once I finish that, we'll check back in again, but for now, I'm gonna go eat my steak. Okay guys, whoops. Okay guys, we are going to do this handheld style because I'm too lazy to go get my tripod. So hopefully it's not too wobbly, but I have now finished Confessions and surprisingly ended up enjoying it more than I thought I would. At the beginning, I was not really sure about the writing style, the very stream of conscious diary type style, but ended up not minding it. I think that this book did a really good job tying everything together. Things that I didn't think were going to be at all important in the beginning ended up being very important later on in the book. I think that she did a really good job explaining, or not really explaining, but making me understand character motives. You're getting many different points of view. Each chapter is a different point of view of everybody involved in this story, and seeing things from their perspective and from their eyes really did help flesh out all of these characters that you weren't getting a lot of information from or about in other points of view. So I really liked that. I enjoyed how everything kind of revolved around a central theme and how each point of view ended up rounding back to this particular point, this particular theme, I guess, for the way you could put it. The only thing that I didn't love is I did feel like it dragged a little bit while we were waiting on things to happen and for things to come together. This book is not overly thrilling in a traditional sense, but it is, and you're waiting to figure out how is this going to happen? How is everything going to tie together? Where is this thing going? But the plot itself moves quite slowly. It doesn't have a lot of dialogue. It's very stream of conscious, so it's not exactly my style, but I can't say that there was anything inherently wrong with it. The only thing that I ended up not giving a super high score for was setting. I don't think that she did a great job at describing the setting. It's not supposed to, but I wouldn't say that I could visualize Japan or the setting. So overall, just to quickly go through my rating and the stars and kind of where we sit right now on the leaderboard. For characters, I gave it a 9. Setting was a 5. This is all out of 10, by the way. Writing ended up being an 8. Plot was a 9, and enjoyment was a 7 for a total of 7.5, and that comes out to a 3.5 star. In case you were wondering, this year, for the most part, I think I'm going to be using Cassidy's rating system, which does make it a little bit harder to get those 4 and 5 star reads. The biggest block is definitely the 3 stars. It weights enjoyment just slightly more than the other values, so the less you enjoy, the lower the rating, the more you enjoy, the better the rating's gonna be. I feel like this one's a win. A 3.5 star for me is solid. I mean, that's a 7.5 out of 10. So glad that I read this finally, and I'm excited to know now why everybody loves it so much. And I think that the ending was very well done, just bringing everything completely full circle, and was like, ooh, damn. That is book 1 down. I have no idea what I'm reading next, but I will let you guys know when I know. Hey guys, so we've had a circus at my house the last couple of days. David is babysitting a dog and then found a dog, so we now have 3 dogs when he comes over, and it's been a little bit of a hot mess express, but I did manage to read about half of Sundial, and this is on Lexi's favorite of the year list. I think I might have seen it on one other person's favorites, but I can't remember who that was. I really enjoyed The Last House on Needless Street. I think I gave it 5 stars last year before last, but Sundial is a different beast. So Sundial is following a woman named Rob, and she's concerned about her daughter Callie and what Callie has in, like, what her urges are, and you know that this is reminding her of something from her past. She's having a lot of marital issues, and they are absolutely horrible to one another. Honestly, it's a very weird book. I don't know really what's going on even to this point. I don't have any idea where it's going. It does have a lot of like animal cruelty and discussions of animal experiments, so just kind of be aware of that going in if that's going to bother you. It's not overly graphic, but it is there and it's discussed a lot. I don't know, it's weird. It's really weird, and I don't know how I feel about it. It's not weird necessarily in a bad way, as long as everything kind of comes together and makes sense in the end, but it could be weird in a bad way if things are weird just for the sake of it and not having a point, if that makes sense. So we'll see. I'm still really intrigued. I do feel like about the 30-ish% mark, we really did kind of take a nosedive on the pacing, and it's been quite slow since then, so I'm hoping something happens soon because I've been a little bit bored toward the middle of the book, whereas the intrigue from the weirdness was becoming repetitive and they lost me just a little bit, but we'll see. I'm very hopeful because I gave Last House on Needless Street 5 stars. So Lexi, here's to hoping. Okay guys, so I have officially finished Sundial, and it went okay. It's definitely not Last House on Needless Street by any stretch of the imagination. It's good, but I don't feel like the ending was nearly as clever as Last House on Needless Street was. I found it a lot more predictable. The story as a whole was a lot more slower paced. I felt like it really lulled in moments for me. So while I enjoy Catriona Ward's psychological suspense horror, I don't think that this one was nearly as strong as Needless Street. So I ended up giving the characters a 7. I felt like I did understand the characters, and I felt like they were nuanced enough. I gave the setting also a 7. I did feel like I understood what Sundial looked like and the setting in and of itself. Writing ended up being a 6 just because I felt like there were a couple of things that were unnecessary and didn't really have a point overall. I mean, I guess that they did try to tie in the last like 10 pages, but I needed a little bit more of it than just a quick, oh, I put this in for this, and it needed more than that. And then plot similarly was a 6 just because I did feel like the ending was pretty predictable and not nearly just as clever in the nuance and the way that she foreshadowed as Needless Street was. And then enjoyment was also a 6. I enjoyed it better than just completely mediocre, but I definitely felt like the pacing was not great, and sometimes the writing felt a little immature and clunky. So it ended up being a 6.33, which is going to put it just a little bit behind Kayla's pick, and it's still a 3-star read. Just basic, run-of-the-mill, decent. So I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to move on to next. I think I'm going to move on to Fires of Vengeance by Evan Winter. This was on Cassidy's Best Books of the Year, and it's one of the only ones that I have not read that was on her Best Books of the Year. I read the first book, Rage of Dragons, like 3 years ago. Well, it may not have been that long. I don't even know if it's been out 3 years, but it's been a long time. And I really enjoyed it when I read it, but I'm a little worried about going into the sequel because I feel like it's been so long. It is following Tao, who is seeking revenge after the death of his father. We've got fire magic. We have wars. It's a revenge and training story, and I'm interested to see how it continues. Faith has it I'm going to be continuing and getting up to date on a series, which I said I wanted to do this year anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on that hopefully tomorrow, and I will check back in with you guys hopefully when it's going well. Hey friends, sorry for the same spot update, but I figured since I have now finished Fires of Vengeance, it was probably time that I update you guys on my thoughts. And it was not really fair of me to include a fantasy from Cassidy because, as you guys know, we are fantasy twins. Like, if she loves a book, I'm pretty much guaranteed to at least thoroughly enjoy it. And if she hates one, I am pretty much guaranteed to not love it. So picking a fantasy from her might have been a little bit unfair. And I realize that. This second book, the first book was really, really fast paced, almost to a fault, because I felt like I didn't really get to know the characters super well. This book was the exact opposite. For a lot of the book, it is a lot more slow going. It is a lot more character developed and character focused. We do have some really big action moments and things like that, and we do learn a lot more about the history of this world and the magic system in this world, which I found really interesting. I do think that this one suffers a little bit from pacing. So like I said, the first book being so incredibly fast, and then the first half of this one being relatively slow, but I still loved it. That last 15% was amazing. And it really felt like I got to understand and empathize with a lot of these characters. The ending actually switched point of views, which I found to be interesting. I wish we had gotten a little bit more from that and a little bit more backstory and resolution to the way that a certain character felt in that point of view. But either way, absolutely loved it. Okay. So let's just quickly go through my rating for this one. I'm going to give characters an 8.5. They were phenomenal. There were a few little pieces where I wished I had learned a little bit more and known them a little bit more, but overall, very few flaws in character development here. I think that they were great. For setting, I'm also going to give it an 8.5. I really felt like we delved into the world a lot more in this book, and we were in the underworld a little bit more, which I found super cool. We got a lot of backstory and how this world and the magic system works, so I think that was amazing. The writing is a 9. Evan Winter knows how to write. I don't really need to say any more than that. Plot was an 8. Like I said, there were some pacing issues primarily with the beginning and then speeding up a lot at the end. But I do feel like after we kind of got through the halfway point, a lot of those seemed to even out and we were getting equal points plot moving forward and equal points learning more about the characters in the world. And then for enjoyment, I'm going to give it a 9. I really, really loved this book and I had a great time with it. So that is an 8.67, which is technically a 4.5 or high 4-star read. This one was one that I was really struggling with potentially giving a 5 because I loved the ending so much, but I did struggle in the beginning. And so I felt like it didn't quite reach 5-star level, but it was really darn close. So thanks, Cassidy, for finally making me read this, but also I'm mad at you because now I have to wait who knows how long for book 3 because we don't have any news on book 3 right now. And I will say that the dedication to this book in the beginning is to his dad, who passed away about the time I think he was writing this book, and it just literally almost made me cry. It was so sweet and so thoughtful. So I'm hoping that he is able to get back to writing soon, but understand why obviously that hasn't happened yet. So this one was a solid win. I am very, very excited to have finally read it, and it helps with my Jumpstart January goals because it's continuing and catching up on a series. So I'm trying to decide what I'm gonna do next. I need another audiobook. So we're either gonna do Killers of a Certain Age, which is for Chandler, or maybe The Shuddering for Gabby. I'm thinking I'm gonna go with The Shuddering because it's a really quick read. It's super short, and she said it's kind of like a horror movie in book form. So I think I am going to do that one, and I will check back in with you guys. Hopefully I'll remember about halfway, but I'll let you know when I have a little bit more thoughts on that one. So this clip may not be usable because you can probably hear the creepy birds in the background. For some reason over the last week, we have had hordes of birds just flying everywhere like blackbirds, and it's kind of weird because I bet there's hundreds of thousands of them and it's a little creepy. But anyway, I have finished The Shuddering, and I haven't run it through my rating system yet, so once I do, I will leave everything up on the bottom below for you guys, but it's feeling like a lower 3-star. It is a very B-movie, but not B-movie enough, if that makes sense. So this is following a group of people that decide to go stay in their father's for sale cabin, and the brother invites the sister's old flame, and the old flame invites his girlfriend, and then the sister invites a friend, and it's a lot of different people and a lot of different things going on. There are many different interwoven relationships here, and I see what the author I think was trying to do, but this is, like I said, a very B-movie type story. So I was expecting monsters, lots of monsters, some gore, just get them kind of thing. And you know how in a B movie a lot of times you'll have that initial kind of character relationship set up so that you can basically figure out who's gonna die first. But in this one, the author spent a large majority of the book setting up all of these relationships and giving you all of this backstory, and none of it just felt fleshed out enough for me to care, but there was way too much of it and not enough of the monster for me to not supposed to care, if that makes sense. So I just didn't love the character work in this one. The setting was good. I did feel that the snowy setting was done really well. The plot would have been fine. It would have been exactly what it was supposed to do, except for I felt like we spent way too much time on the relationships between these characters that ended up really only being there to serve a purpose of getting particular characters out of the cabin. So I just didn't love that part. The enjoyment is going to be somewhere a little over the middle because it was fun, it was fast-paced, it was not just man completely terrible or anything like that. I did have a good time with it. I just wanted more monsters and less like petty squabbling. I do think that this author really struggled with writing females too, because they were basically just hysterical bimbos. And again, that's a trope that's very, very commonly used in B movies, so it's not necessarily a huge knock, but just kind of know that that's a little annoying. The dog, there's a dog. If the dog had not made it, I would have been very upset. So you can rest assured that the dog is fine. Anyway, we'll see where it ends up. I'm gonna leave the rankings so far right here for you guys so we can see kind of where we're at. Best I recall, it is Cassidy, then Kayla, then Lexi, and then probably Gabby. And next up, I think I'm going to go with Nikita and do Mickey 7 because I need some sci-fi in my life, and I'm trying to break up the horror and thriller because I definitely had the most of those with a fantasy or sci-fi in between. So I will check back in with you guys once I am done with Mickey 7. I have heard that it is very similar to Andy Weir and has that kind of comedy. I'm hoping it's not too comedic for me, but I'm excited to give it a try and hopefully find a new favorite since I loved Project Hail Mary last year. Okay, so I'm about to do some treadmill walking because your girl just, I need some exercise in my life. But really quickly before that, I wanted to update you guys on Mickey 7 and how that is going so far. It's going well. This is following a guy who decides to be one of the expendables to try to get off of his home planet. And essentially what an expendable is somebody that can be killed for experimental purposes or dangerous missions over and over and over again and brought back to life over and over and over again. But the difference is you can feel death every time, you can't always speed it up, etc., etc. And then one day while he's on a mission, everybody assumes that he dies, but he didn't, so now there is a Mickey 7 and a Mickey 8. I am liking this book. I'm having a fun time with it, but it's not going to be an all-time favorite. There are a lot of logic issues in this that I just feel like there's many things that I'm going, wait, what? How does that work? I don't really follow kind of situations. I can absolutely see where fans of Andy Weir would love this book because it does have that kind of humor and sarcasm to it. I would say that there's not a ton of plot in this so far, and therefore you really have to love the characters in order for this book to work. Unfortunately, I'm finding the humor to be a little bit too much. It is a very sarcastic, dry sense of humor, but there is a lot of it. And I don't love the relationships. I find them a little strange and unrealistic, to be honest. And because of that, it's bringing down my enjoyment of the book as a whole, but I'm still having a good time with it. I'm still having fun. I want to continue reading. It's quick, and I'm interested to see how everything wraps up. So I'm going to go hop on the treadmill and then I will check back in with you guys once I've finished Mickey 7. Okay guys, really quickly, hopefully before my battery dies, I wanted to update you on Mickey 7. I did finish this one. Unfortunately, it kind of missed the mark for me. I definitely see why people would enjoy this book. I see why fans of Andy Weir would be recommended this book. It has that sarcastic humor. It is a sci-fi based story. So I definitely see where the comparisons come in. I think for me, it just missed the mark on the characters. The humor was just not quite up my alley, and the characters to me, I just didn't connect with. And because of that, and because this is a very character driven story, I think that that's where it missed the mark for me. So it's not that it's a bad book, but if you're somebody that enjoys a little bit of science, a little bit of plot, but you want a lot of character work and you like a very sarcastic, sometimes self-deprecating type of character, then this might really, really work for you. I ended up giving the characters in this one a 5. I found the relationships to be a little bit unbelievable and at times kind of strange, but I did like Mickey. So I can't really fault the entirety of the characters because I think that Mickey was an interesting character. I think that he was definitely all that he was supposed to be, but I found that his relationships to other characters to be the problem here. I also decided to give the setting a 7. I thought that the setting was well done. I could believe that Mickey was going out over and over and over again and having to sacrifice himself. They were on this spaceship, limited rations. I definitely did see that. The writing I gave a 6. There were some spots where I found that it was a little bit repetitive and we were seeing the same scenes over and over again, but for the most part, it was really well written. I didn't have a lot of problems with like the style or the dialogue or anything like that. The plot I ended up having to give a 4, unfortunately, because I just felt like it didn't have much of a plot. We kind of set up the Mickey 8 thing in the beginning, but I just kind of wanted more off-world type stuff. I wanted more about these creatures. I just needed more from it. And we spent the majority of the book with Mickey just kind of running around talking to people. And then the enjoyment, I ended up giving it a 5. It was kind of straight down the middle. I didn't hate it. I didn't absolutely love it. I didn't want to DNF it, but also wasn't dying to continue either. So this comes out at a 5.33, which is a very high 2-star. Makes it sound a lot harsher than how I felt about the book. I feel like if you were to just ask me what's your rating and I hadn't put it through a system, I would probably say it was a lower 3-star. And for me, a 3-star is not bad. But putting it through the rating and trying to be a little bit more concrete and objective about what I thought is what brought it down to the 2.5-star. Again, I think that this book absolutely has its audience. I just think that that audience wasn't me personally. So that is everything on Mickey 7. Now I think I'm going to move into Chandler's pick, which is Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn. This is one that I've heard pretty good things about overall. The author I've heard amazing things about, but Killers of a Certain Age has been a few good, a few really great, so I'm interested to see how this goes, and it's the first true, like, mystery of this vlog. I feel like we've had a horror, we've had a thriller, we've had some sci-fi. This will be the first true mystery, so I'm excited to read it, and I will start on my commute tomorrow. Okay guys, so we have to make this quick because I am very late to work, but I just wanted to tell you guys that I have started Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn, and I did not think I was going to like this book. I figured it would be just an okay thing that was fun and that I didn't regret reading, but never wanted to read like her other series. And I will be honest, I am pleasantly charmed. This is a funny time. We're following a woman in her 60s after 40 years of working in an all-female assassins unit. And there's just something about a woman in her 60s and the things that she can get away with saying that as a 20, 30-something-year-old, you're told, you know, you can't say that, it would be rude. That's just so refreshing, and I'm having a good time. It's a lot of fun. So I'll check back in once I've read a little bit more of it and have a lot more thoughts, but I just wanted to let you know that I am pleasantly charmed and pleasantly surprised. Okay guys, so time to chat about Killers of a Certain Age. This book was so much fun. It took me by complete and utter surprise because it's nothing like any of the buzzwords that I would have thought I enjoyed. It is a little bit historical. We've got a historical and a present timeline. It is about older assassin women. It is kind of comical in a sarcastic way. Comical's not usually my thing. It's a murder mystery of a sorts, and it just does not hit any of my buzzwords, and I had a fantastic time. This is following a woman, or a group of women that are retiring from being assassins after 40 years, and they go on their retirement cruise and realize that either someone was trying to kill them or didn't care if they killed them. And they're retiring from the museum, which is an assassin's agency that goes after bad people that would have otherwise escaped justice. I loved it. It was very charming, if you can call a assassin's story charming. I could really believe these women's relationships. They were almost sisters of a sorts, but you could just feel that they had known each other for 40 years. And there's just something about a 60-year-old woman that gives no craps and just says whatever she's thinking and does whatever she needs to do and keeps on trucking. And I loved it. I did feel like the ending was just a tad bit rushed, but overall I had a fantastic time with this book. I think that if you are somebody that loves like Finley Donovan is Killing It, this is not at all Finley Donovan is Killing It, but it kind of gives me those vibes. I think that fans of that series would also really, really enjoy this one as well. It was extremely well written, and it was just a lot of fun, and I never would have picked it up without this video, so I am so very glad that I did. Just to really quickly go through my ratings, I gave it characters a 9. I really just enjoyed the 60-year-old take no prisoners, say whatever you gotta say mentality, and I believed their relationships wholeheartedly, so that one was a 9. Setting is gonna be an 8. It's our world, and there really wasn't a lot of the setting, but it also was believable in that these women were retired assassins and the museum and everything was well fleshed out. So I think I'm going to give that one an 8. The writing is an 8.5. It was extremely well done. There were a few minor repetitive things and stuff like that, but overall I thought that the writing was extremely well done. I'm going to give the plot an 8. The very end was a little bit rushed for me, but overall I think that it was well paced. I had a good time with it, and enjoyment is going to be a 9. I had a ton of fun with this story. So that brings us to a total of an 8.58, which is a 4.5 star. Who would have thunk it? Surprise of the video. And that's gonna put Chandler just below Cassidy. And I never would have thought. I would have thought that this one would have been like middle of the road at best, but we have found a potentially new favorite read, and so I'm really, really excited to read her series. I have the first 2 and I've been putting them off, but after reading this one, I'm very excited to start those. So let's talk about Along the Razor's Edge. So I've actually already started Along the Razor's Edge, and I'm really enjoying this one. This is Dom's favorite book of the year. It is a Rob J. Hayes, and I have read one Rob J. Hayes before and I enjoyed it, and then I ended up not finishing Never Die just because it really wasn't my type of story. But this one I'm having a good time with. It is following a young sorceress who has been a part of this war, but then she's basically taken as a prisoner of war, and it's following kind of her leading up to becoming the prisoner of war as well as her time in the prison. And I agree with Cassidy. She said that this character really reminds her of a sarcastic, petty drama queen Nona from Red Sister, and I completely agree. This main character is so much fun to read from. It's a very in her head kind of book, but he just writes her extremely well. She's got some great one-liners. She's extremely sarcastic. She is a little bit bitchy, and I am here for it. Oh, so far I am noticing some repetitiveness where we'll say one thing and then 2 sentences later kind of repeat the same phrase or the same thing. And it's a little bit annoying, but not enough that it's hindering my enjoyment of the story. And I'm hopeful that as Rob J. Hayes kind of settles into the story and the characters and everything, that will get better. I find that that's the case with a lot of first indie books in a fantasy series. So it's fine. It's not really a big deal. It's just noticeable. Otherwise, I'm enjoying it. It's a very self-contained story in this first book, but this is a 5-book series, and I think that the last one is really, really long. So I'm expecting the world to really expand. The magic system is super cool, and I'm enjoying it a lot so far. So I am hoping to get a pretty decent bit of it done this weekend. It's one of my Patreon 72-hour readathons, and we got the prompts favorite genre and indie. So it's absolutely perfect. I am going to read this all this weekend, but I'd love to finish it tonight or tomorrow. So I'll check back in with you once I'm done with that, and we'll see where Dom ends up on the leaderboard. I have you guys propped very precariously at the moment, but I figured we really needed to talk about Along the Razor's Edge because I just finished it on sprints with my Patreons and really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it a 4-star. It was one of those where I had a fantastic time with it, but did have a few minor issues. One of them was just kind of the repetitive nature of the story, and then our narrator is an older version of herself, kind of going back and talking about things that happened in her past, and so we were getting a little bit more information than I really wanted, which lowered the stakes a little bit, but at the same time it added a little bit of charm too, so I can't 100% fault that. I also wish that the plot had been a little bit more expanded. We spend the majority of our time as her as a prisoner of war trying to get out of her current situation. And while that was interesting, I do kind of wish it had been more like half the book, and then we'd started setting up a little bit more the bigger plot a little earlier. But overall, I still really enjoyed it, had a great time with it. I think I'm going to end up giving the characters a 9. I absolutely loved, is it Nesca? And I think that she was just a hilarious character to be in the head of. If you don't like her, you won't like this book because the majority of it is just really spending all of your time in her head. But I enjoyed it. I had a really good time with it. For setting, I'm going to give it an 8. I felt like the setting was pretty vivid down in this cave thing where they were. It may not have been my preferred like setting for the entire book, but I definitely felt the vibes and the creatures and the creepiness of where she was. I'm gonna give writing a 7 just because, like I said, a few stylistic choices as well as the repetitive nature of the story. There were several scenes, phrases, stuff like that that was just repeated pretty consistently over and over again. So I do feel like that will hopefully improve as we go along with the story. The plot, I'm gonna give a 7.5. It was a very contained, very small scale plot, but I do expect that to grow exponentially through the remainder of the series. So I still think it was a good plot. I just wanted to expand some. And then for enjoyment, I'm going to give it a 9. I had a great time with it. Even though I have my nitpicks, it was so much fun, easy to read, quick, and I'm really excited to continue with the series. So that brings us to an 8.25, and that puts Dom in a 3rd place behind Cassidy and Chandler. This video has been such a win so far. I've gotten some really good books, some new favorites, as well as just some generally I'm so glad I read them books, so I'm excited. Really quickly, let's touch on my feelings of Sea of Rune. Sea of Rune was Kaylee's pick, and it is by Pam Godwin. It is a pirate, historical, dark romance following a girl that is a pirate captain. And she eventually gets kind of thrown off of her ship and in the hands of a British war soldier guy, captain, whatever you want to call him. And I just am not loving this as much as I wanted to. It's got a very dramatic writing style, which I have settled into and is not bothering me. It's a very historical Regency romance kind of style, even though this isn't Regency. I like Priest. I think that Priest is interesting. When we were introduced to Ashley, I felt like his was a bit of an insta-love kind of connection, and it just, I wanted the pining. That's one thing that I really wanted from this story, was pining and slow burn, sexy, kind of just wanting to want the other person even though they were forbidden and taboo. And we got a very minuscule amount of that before all of a sudden they were in each other's pants, which is fine, but it's a 400 and something page book. So I'm at 50%, not a whole lot has happened. What are we supposed to do with the last 50%? Like, where's the plot? Where's the tension? Where's, you know, I don't know. It's not overly working for me, but I don't dislike it either. I can absolutely see why people would enjoy it, and I can see why it would be some people's favorite. I just don't know if it's gonna work particularly for me, but we'll see. I've still got half the book to go, so there is definitely the potential for it to be something that I really enjoy, but I need to finish it. So I'm gonna go take off my makeup, get into bed, and read, and I will touch base once I hopefully have finished Sea of Rune. Okay, well, buddy, let's talk about Sea of Rune by Pam Godwin. But I don't know how to put my thoughts into words on this one. I did not love it, unfortunately. I struggled a little bit with the writing style in the beginning. It's very dramatic and formal, but I feel like that's the case for a lot of historical romances, so that was fine, and it ended up being perfectly okay. This book is supposed to be a dark romance, but to me, a bunch of rape scenes is not dark romance, especially when there is no like really depth emotion shown or consequences to that. The main character will just kind of have that happen to her and then bounce back almost immediately and be completely fine. And I just don't feel like that was great. I feel like that needs to be represented a little bit better, especially to make me believe it. There's also two main love interests, and I didn't feel chemistry between her or either one of them, honestly. The one with Ashley is just so much insta-love. It happens on the turn of a dime. He does something repulsive, and she's immediately like, cool, let me get into your pants. And I'm like, that just doesn't, the motivations and how the characters react to things is purely there to drive the plot and to get it on. It's not actually doing anything to build chemistry or trust or character foundations or the world or anything like that. This book was anything but sexy to me. Honestly, a lot of scenes were very either comical or disturbing, or I don't know, it did not work for me. I know one of the main love interests was supposed to be like this really tough guy, and the other one was supposed to be the rule follower, but I don't know, I felt Priest more than I did Ashley, but in all entirety, neither one of them with her did much for me. There was also a scene at the very end where she does something that's completely out of character, and it's like 2 lines and then brushed over and kept on going. There's another one that happens purely to have one thing happen and then move on with the rest of the book, and there's just so many pointless scenes in here. I think that Pam Godwin is a good writer, and I think that this book had a lot of potential, but it was way too long, and it just wasn't giving what she was setting up, I guess, if that makes sense. So I ended up giving the characters a 4. I didn't believe the main character really at all. There's something that happened that I liked better, but because that happened, it does still lend the characters down a little bit. The setting, again, was kind of subpar. I really wanted to feel like they were on this boat and they were pirates and the sea, but again, I just didn't really feel that either. The writing, I'm going to give a 6 for the most part. I do think that it was well written. There were some pacing issues and things of that nature, but for the most part, the syntax and everything was fine. The plot is a 3. It had basically no plot, and what it did have was just very convenient. Didn't love that. And then enjoyment is probably going to be between a 3 and a 4. I did not have the best time. I found myself skimming a lot of it. And I really hate to say that because I know that this book is so well loved by so many people. And I really wanted to love it too. It's been on my TBR for forever. I had really high hopes for it. That's why it was the Indie Archive pick for this month. And so I feel really bad that I didn't love it. And I'm sorry, Kaylee. I'm sorry. I wanted to so bad, but it did not work for me. So that is going to put Kaylee down at the bottom at number 9 because this comes out to a 4.17. I'm sorry. I kind of wish I hadn't had a leaderboard now, to be honest with you, but we're here, we're committed, we're doing it. There have been some precarious angles in this video because I am too lazy to go find my tripod. Today's been a pretty good day so far. David and I went to lunch, we got some custard, I went to Barnes & Noble, and at some point I'll show you guys what I got from Barnes & Noble, but I'm excited to read both of them. However, I spent the drive there and the drive home listening to Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher, and I'm about 70-ish of the way through, and I think I'm going to DNF it. It's not the book for me. It's a well-written book. If I were gonna give like just ratings based off of what I had read so far, it would probably be like a really, really high 2, low 3 star, but unfortunately it's just not doing it for me. This is a very cozy fantasy following a girl that has been widowed and her uncle gave her his entire inheritance, but her family obviously wants that inheritance. She's thinking about killing herself, and when she draws the sword from the sheath, a man appears and they go off on an adventure to try to get back her inheritance. It is a classic, like, cozy style fantasy. The main character is a little bit whiny, a lot dramatic, and just that's the style of the character, but it's just not really working for me. Combine that with the lack of plot and the super, super, super slow burn romance, and it's just not hitting any of my buzzwords. But I can absolutely see where this would be something that fans of cozy fantasy would really, really enjoy. I just don't think that cozy fantasy is for me. So I am going to be putting it down, not through any fault of its own and not through any fault of Riley's. It's just not the book for me. So unfortunately, that does put Riley on the bottom of the leaderboard just because I didn't finish the book. But if I had finished the book, like I said, I think she would have been kind of middle of the road. So keep that in mind. Hopefully it sounds like something that would be interesting for you, and I still did some good reading it. But I think that next up I'm going to be starting The Atlas Paradox. This is the sequel to Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake, and it is Ashley's pick. Hey guys, I'm feeling a little bit headachy today, so I think that I'm going to make this relatively quick, but I did want to check in and let you know that I have started Atlas Paradox, and I'm liking it okay. I'm about 35% in, and I don't really feel like anything is happening. There's a few things that are starting to happen and conversations that we're starting to have, but I just feel like Olivia Blake does a lot of meandering around to try to get in philosophical topics, and I don't know that that's really sucking me into the story. I like the way that she does morally gray characters. I do like some of the discussions that she has. I just wish we would kind of get a move on a little bit with the plot while we're having these discussions. I am very curious about Gideon and how that whole situation with Libya is going to work. I'm curious about what Tristan has just asked Nico to do. I'm going to be pretty vague because I don't want to spoil anything, but I've heard this book revs up a lot in the last 100 pages or so, so I'm looking forward to seeing how it ends, but right now I just wish that we would get a little bit of a move on. But anyway, that's all I really had to say for right now. I'm going to hopefully get this thing finished before it returns itself to the library, and I'll be back with the final update. I swear I leave this spot, but it's just it's my spot. It's my spot. So we're going to talk about Atlas Paradox from here. Unfortunately, this one just didn't really work for me as a sequel. It felt very much so like a filler book, in my opinion, just one where our characters are kind of meandering around. They're doing a lot of talking. There's not really as much world building or development as I was hoping for. At the end of Atlas 6, we get this really big reveal. We expect for things to go boom, really start to move forward. We're going to learn a lot more about the society. We're going to learn more about each character's magic. We're going to learn more about Atlas and Ezra's history, and we just don't get much of that. I was really hoping for just an expansion of everything. But in actuality, it's a lot of philosophical discussions, which is fine, but makes the plot move quite slowly. So I think I'm going to end up probably giving this one a 2.5 star. I was really debating between a 2.5 and a 3 because I didn't hate it, and I can understand why people would love it. If you loved the philosophical, slow, dark academia type part of the Atlas 6, then this book may really, really work for you. If you liked more of the magic and the world and the societal discussions in Atlas 6, you may find this one a little bit boring. I do plan to continue on to the third and final book. I definitely will read it, but I did find myself zoning out quite a bit, and the ending I may actually have to go back and reread. But anyway, I think I am going to end up giving the characters in this a 5. They just weren't as fleshed out as I thought they would be based off of the Atlas Paradox or Atlas 6. I was really expecting more development and understanding of their backstory, and we definitely got this on a few of them, but there are a bunch of characters, and so I was just expecting a little bit more from that overall. The setting I'm going to give a 5. It just really, there was not a lot of the society, and this place where they're staying was very lackluster. Like I said, we did a lot of talking in this book. I'm going to give the writing a 7. It was well written. I can't complain about that. I might even bump that up to an 8. I mean, it is technically very well written. Plot, I'm going to give a 5. Like I said, we did a lot of talking and not a lot of doing much of anything, not a lot of development or forward movement. And then for enjoyment, I think I'm gonna give it a 6. I liked it a little bit. I wanna say I liked it a little bit better than average. I was bored for a decent bit of it, but I understand it. So I think that I'm gonna give this a 6. So that comes out to a 5.67, and that puts Ashley at, I believe it's 6th on the leaderboard. I will put it over here so that you guys can see it. But anyway, that wraps up everybody's picks. I think I'm gonna film a proper conclusion tomorrow. So let's just jump to future mail. Okay, different day, same shirt. Ignore Ollie back here doing whatever it is that he does. But I wanted to close out this vlog and give you guys just some basic rundown of how this all went and where everybody finally ended up. I am so pleased with where this vlog ended up because I found some favorite books, like some books that I absolutely loved in this, and a lot of them were shocking, like things that I would not have thought that I would love or really enjoy, and so I'm really happy with how this turned out. If we're looking just at the leaderboard, and I'm gonna scoot over so that you guys can see that up here, Cassidy did win. I, again, feel like that's a little bit unfair because she gave me a fantasy, and obviously I love high epic fantasy, but she won with an 8.67, which is a very high 4-star. The shocker of the century was Chandler's pick with Killers of a Certain Age. Like, I cannot believe that I loved that book as much as I did, but I was enamored. It was so much fun and just exactly what I needed in the moment. So she's at 2nd place with an 8.58, which is also a very high 4-star. Dom coming in. I actually DNF'd one of Rob J. Hayes' other books. I liked Titan Hoppers pretty well, so I was expecting to enjoy but not love Along the Razor's Edge, and I loved that main character, had a fantastic time with it. So ended up giving this one a 8.5, which is another really high 4-star read. I actually think I might have adjusted the ratings a little bit on Along the Razor's Edge since you guys saw it. Looking at my spreadsheet, I actually think that one ended up getting an 8.5 in the end, which just barely gets it below Chandler, and is another high 4-star read. So absolutely loved that one as well. Kayla comes in at number 4, Kayla / Gavin, because this was on Gavin's Best of the Year as well, with Confessions. Really enjoyed Confessions. I can absolutely see why people would love it. I can see why people would recommend it over and over again. I love what it had to say. I love the themes and the parallels that it drew. I thought that all of that was done extremely well. I didn't absolutely adore the stream of conscious writing style, although I did get used to it, so I can see where that maybe hindered the enjoyment just a little bit for me, but it gets a 7.5, which is still an awesome score and a really high 3-star, which for me is a great and solid book. Then next we had Lexi, and Lexi gave me Sundial. It ended up being a 6.67. Really enjoyed this one. Last House on Needless Street was one that I absolutely loved, and Sundial I was expecting to really love as well. Didn't quite hit the mark for Last House on Needless Street, but I'm super glad that I read it and still enjoyed it for the most part. It ended up being a 3-star. Then we have Gabby's pick, which was The Shuddering, and that got a 6.17, which is also still a 3-star. I wanted this to be a little bit more B-movie than it was. It did a lot more character work than I anticipated it doing, and unfortunately, I wanted that slasher, monster, creature feature type B-movie. So I enjoyed it, but wish that it had gone a little bit of a different direction personally. Then at number 7, we have Ashley with The Atlas Paradox. This was a sequel to The Atlas 6, which I enjoyed reading. I think it may have been year before last now because I read the indie copy. This one just felt a little bit like a filler book to me. It had middle book syndrome. Not bad, just it had middle book syndrome. And then Nikita gave me Mickey 7. I wanted to love Mickey 7 so much. It ended up being a higher 2-star read. I think the humor just didn't work for me, and if the humor works for you, then you're gonna absolutely love it. There is a pretty good bit of that sarcasm, almost self-deprecating main character, so I can see where people would adore this book. The humor just didn't work for me. And then Kaylee comes in at number 9 at 4.17 with Sea of Rune. I wanted to love this book so very much, but unfortunately it just did not work for me. The pirate romance that was supposed to be like super sexy and dark and gritty just missed the mark for me. Unfortunately, I didn't find it dark or gritty. I just found it a little bit cringy, but I can see where people would have a great time with it. It's all of what you're looking for in dark romance. And then Riley's pick was Sore Heart. It ended up being a DNF, not for any fault of Riley's at all. I just don't think I like cozy fantasy. I ended up reading Legends and Lattes last year and gave it a 3-star. Like, it was fine, it was good, but it wasn't great. I DNF'd Nettle and Bone, and T. Kingfisher wrote Hollow Places, which I absolutely adored, so I know that I really like that author. I think that cozy fantasy is just not the book for me. Okay guys, well, this is flashing at me that I don't have any time left on my memory card, so I'm gonna wrap this up. As always, links to my Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, and Goodreads are all in the description box down below. Thank you so much to everyone that participated in this video by letting me mooch books off of their favorites list, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!